Throughout history, society has undergone incredible transformations, with customs evolving alongside our knowledge, economic situations, and political climates. What was once considered normal now seems utterly insane or downright comical. It's time to explore the strange and wacky practices of our ancestors. Nowadays, we're familiar with shipping packages that meet certain size and weight requirements. But in the past, mail carriers took their duties to a whole new level of peculiarity. Back when postal services were just taking off, regulations were lax, leaving plenty of room for mischief. Believe it or not, parents actually entrusted their precious children to mail carriers, who delivered them to their grandparents' homes. One famous case involved 5-year-old May Pierstorff, who embarked on a 75-mile journey using the parcel post in the U.S. She was safely transported by her mail carrier cousin, Leonard Moschel, to her grandparents' house. This strange trend only ended in 1914 when the company finally put a stop to shipping children. Ah, the good old days of unconventional child transportation. Recognizing the importance of regularly exposing children and babies to fresh air for good health, and given the lack of green spaces outdoors and cramped living spaces, a device was created in 1922 to be attached to apartment windows. This invention was a wire and iron cage with a slanted roof to protect children from the elements, like rain and snow, and was meant to be hung outside buildings, extending from any window. The inside could be lined with soft fabric so the baby could sleep while suspended several feet off the ground, held only by iron bars and a few screws around the window frame. Mothers could leave toys in the cages and keep their little ones entertained all day. Many did just that. With growing concerns about child safety, these cages gradually fell out of use, with no reports of accidents or injuries from their use, thankfully. Believe it or not, barbers were also called upon to handle medical procedures. In the Middle Ages, these multi-talented individuals, known as barber-surgeons, catered to both aesthetics and healthcare. However, they were considered inferior to doctors and surgeons who had received formal education. The barber-surgeons, often lacking a proper education, operated in monasteries and served those who couldn't afford more specialized care. It's safe to say that modern hospitals are a far cry from those days, don't you think? Have you subscribed to Top 10? Don't miss the best videos of cool facts for you. The profession of professional mourners has existed for over 4,000 years in various cultures worldwide. The job involves hiring a woman to cry at strangers' funerals with no emotional connection to the deceased. The mourner attends the ceremonies to shed tears in tribute. It was believed that the more people present and showing strong emotions at a funeral, the more popular the deceased was. This profession still exists in some parts of the world. In Brazil, you can find them in rural areas. The most famous Brazilian mourner is probably Rocha, who cried at the funerals of notable figures like Ayrton Senna, Tancredo Neves, Mario Covas, and Clodovil, among many others. In Taiwan, the most renowned mourner is Liu Junlin. The 30-year-old has been in the profession since she was 11, learning from her grandmother and mother. She earns about $230 per funeral. Today, Junlin owns a funeral home specializing in embalming and organizing funerals. Although she's one of the last mourners and the profession is declining, she says she'll never stop and hopes to teach other women to keep the tradition alive. In the Roman Empire, there was a clear challenge in disposing of human waste in a practical and hygienic manner, so the Romans found alternative uses for their urine and feces. Degraded urine is rich in nitrogen compounds like ammonia and, oddly enough, has cleaning properties. To keep their clothes soft and shiny, Romans sent their garments to a place called a fullo. Togas were placed in vats filled with urine, and people would stomp on the fabric. Then powder and ash were added to aid in washing. The end result was bright white fabric. As for the smell, one can only imagine, right? Urine was also used as a teeth whitener. Yes, they rinsed with both human and animal urine to achieve a brighter smile. Besides the uses mentioned, Romans also used urine to cultivate juicier fruits. The beautiful pomegranates grown in Rome benefited from the properties of the locals' pee to thrive. And the feces? They were used as fertilizers, risking the spread of diseases, and even in leather tanning. In the latter case, the leather was first soaked in urine and then placed in dog or human feces to soften it. One can only imagine how fragrant these folks must have been. Don't you think? In Scotland, it was believed that each animal's dung had a distinct use. For instance, fresh pig dung could be used to stop nosebleeds, while sheep dung was used to combat smallpox. Back in the day, smoking was seen as a symbol of status and confidence. From Hollywood to TV commercials, cigarettes were glamorized and encouraged for all, including pregnant women. Can you believe it? In the 1940s and 50s, some doctors even recommended that expectant mothers smoke up to 4 cigarettes a day. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Thankfully, as research progressed and the harmful effects of smoking became apparent, anti-smoking campaigns emerged. We now know that smoking during pregnancy can lead to devastating consequences like sudden infant death syndrome, low birth weight, and developmental issues in the fetal nervous system. Governments worldwide have implemented public policies and awareness campaigns to help smokers quit. Our children definitely owe us a big thank you. In an era of rapid urban population growth, Americans began to interact daily with a wide range of people. This setting intensified early ideas about racial eugenics in a movement known as the Beautiful City. This movement stemmed from the belief that cities should be as aesthetically pure as possible, leading to the emergence of various discriminatory laws. In this context, in 1881, Chicago Councilman James Peavy created and successfully passed a law prohibiting any sick, disabled, mutilated, or physically deformed person from being seen by the healthy members of society. If any of these individuals, including beggars, were found wandering by an inspector, they could be fined between $1 and $50, depending on their perceived level of ugliness. Those who couldn't pay the fine were sent to an asylum. With the onset of World War II, many Americans suffered severe injuries on the battlefronts, returning home disabled or mutilated. Indian culture is rich and marked by numerous peculiarities, from beautiful festivals and dances, a strong religion, and strict social organization. Even today, there's a dark side, the practice of Sati. Initially, this act was a voluntary, brave, and heroic gesture, where a widow would throw herself onto her husband's funeral pyre and burn to death. For Hindus, Sati symbolized the end of a marriage. It was a sign of a wife's obedience and devotion to her husband, indicating she should follow him even in death. However, it became a forced practice, and even if widows didn't throw themselves onto the funeral pyre, they were expected to find death through other means. Without a husband, they had no role in that society, and if there were no children to support them, Sati was the only perceived way out for these women to prevent becoming a burden. Initially, the practice of Sati was limited to the royal families of the Kshatriya caste, but spread to lower castes, becoming widely practiced among all social classes. Sati peaked between the 15th and 18th centuries, and it's estimated that during this period, about 1,000 widows were burned alive annually, especially in India and Nepal. Exceptions to the practice were if the widow had very young children, was pregnant, or menstruating. Today, the practice is banned, and Sati cases are rare, but they still exist. The most notorious modern case occurred in Rajasthan in 1987. An 18-year-old Rup Kanwar sat on the pyre with her husband's body. The police accused her father-in-law and brother-in-law of forcing her into the act. Although the incident sparked outrage both in and outside India, the two were acquitted by an Indian court in 1996. Waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to fall back asleep can be stressful for many. However, our ancestors considered waking up during the night and sleeping again a few hours later as normal. Instead of sleeping 8 continuous hours, sleep was divided into 2 phases. The first sleep began at 9 p.m. and lasted 4 hours, followed by being awake for about 2 hours until 1 a.m., before sleeping again until dawn. This biphasic sleep pattern was common during the Middle Ages and up to the 17th century. Unlike modern alarm clocks, people woke up naturally back then, just as many of us naturally wake up today. During the 19th and 20th centuries, bathing machines were a common sight along the beaches of Europe and North America. These were wooden huts that floated in the sea, designed to offer privacy and comfort to bathers wanting to cool off in the ocean. Bathing machines were often built with seawater-resistant wood, making them durable and able to withstand waves. They were adorned with colorful curtains and carpets, making them appealing and inviting. Inside, there were changing compartments, and many also had a diving platform for easy water access. Renting a bathing machine was a status symbol for the upper middle class of the time. However, it provided a convenient and luxurious way to enjoy the sea while shielding bathers from the prying eyes of other beachgoers. Back in the day, smoking was seen as a symbol of status and confidence. From Hollywood to TV commercials, cigarettes were glamorized and encouraged for all, including pregnant women. Can you believe it? In the 1940s and 50s, some doctors even recommended that expectant mothers smoke up to 4 cigarettes a day. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Thankfully, as research progressed and the harmful effects of smoking became apparent, anti-smoking campaigns emerged. We now know that smoking during pregnancy can lead to devastating consequences like sudden infant death syndrome, low birth weight, and developmental issues in the fetal nervous system. Governments worldwide have implemented public policies and awareness campaigns to help smokers quit. Our children definitely owe us a big thank you. During the 14th and 15th centuries, European high society women wore footwear known as Chopines. These shoes featured a tall platform made from materials like wood or cork, covered with fabric or leather, and often adorned with jewels and embroidery. Wearing Chopines was a sign of status and elegance, and women wore them as part of their formal attire. However, these shoes also had significant drawbacks. They were extremely difficult to walk in, and many women needed assistance to balance while wearing them. It was also common for women to trip and fall, which could lead to serious injuries. For these reasons, these shoes were eventually abandoned by the end of the 16th century as fashion shifted towards more comfortable and practical footwear. Although they might have been uncomfortable and impractical, their influence can still be seen in today's high-heeled fashion. But you know what's cooler? Subscribing here to Top 10. Have you liked and subscribed yet? The profession of a human alarm clock was common in many ancient communities, and their primary role was to wake people up in the morning, whether for religious, social, or economic purposes. Typically, human alarm clocks were hired by individuals or groups to perform this service regularly. Human alarm clocks used various techniques to wake people, including playing musical instruments, clapping, or ringing bells. Some even employed mechanical devices like chimes or alarm clocks to do their job. The history of human alarm clocks is an interesting reminder of how community needs change over time and how technology can alter the way tasks are performed. This tool has been used since ancient times to straighten and style hair. The ancient Romans and Greeks were already using this type of tool over 2,000 years ago. Back then, they used hot irons to straighten and style hair, which was considered a common practice and even a way to demonstrate social status. Hair was a symbol of beauty and power, especially for women who often used elaborate accessories to create impressive hairstyles. Initially, hair straightening irons were seen as a technological innovation and a safer, more practical way to style hair. However, many early models lacked temperature control, which could cause burns to the scalp and hair. Additionally, the lack of overheating protection could lead to fires. Over time, irons improved and became safer, using materials like ceramic and tourmaline and temperature control to prevent burns. During the 18th and 19th centuries, the body snatching industry was a common practice in many Western countries, including the United States and the United Kingdom. The demand for bodies for medical research was high, but the law prohibited the use of bodies from executed individuals or convicted criminals, making obtaining cadavers a significant challenge. Body snatchers, also known as resurrectionists, were hired by medical schools and doctors in need of bodies for their research. These thieves would exhume freshly buried bodies from graveyards and sell them to medical professionals. Body snatching became so prevalent that in some places watchtowers were built in cemeteries to guard the bodies. Moreover, many began burying their loved ones in metal coffins or using other methods to prevent their bodies from being stolen. The body snatching industry continued to grow until the early 20th century, when laws were enacted to allow the use of bodies from executed individuals or convicted criminals for medical purposes. Today, most bodies used for medical research are donated by individuals who agree to be organ donors after death. Though a shocking practice, the body snatching industry played a crucial role in the development of modern medicine, allowing doctors to study human anatomy and develop new medical treatments. While mud baths with crocodile excrement are still practiced in some parts of the world today, this technique dates back centuries. It was once a popular medicinal practice in various ancient cultures, including Egyptian, Roman, and Greek. Belladonna is a poisonous plant that has been used throughout history for its medicinal properties and also for its aesthetic effect, especially to enhance the appearance of the eyes. However, using belladonna for this purpose is highly dangerous and is not recommended at all. In ancient times, it's believed that belladonna was used by women to dilate their pupils, giving the appearance of large, bright eyes, considered a sign of beauty and allure. Some cultures also associated dilated pupils with a state of sexual arousal, making belladonna even more popular among women seeking to attract partners. The effect of belladonna could last several hours, but it's essential to remember that it's highly dangerous, potentially leading to permanent vision damage or even blindness. The first commercial airplanes didn't have seatbelts, and passengers commonly moved freely around the cabin during flights. However, as aviation evolved and planes became more advanced and faster, air accidents became more common and more deadly. It wasn't until the 1950s that the use of seatbelts on planes began to be recommended. Since then, seatbelts have become mandatory on all commercial flights, and their use is strongly encouraged throughout the flight, even when the plane is in calm flying conditions. Although seatbelts are mandatory on commercial flights, some people still try to avoid or ignore them, either due to discomfort or believing they're unnecessary. I'd like to emphasize that this is an extremely dangerous practice that puts passengers' lives at risk. Airplane seat belts are designed to protect you in case of turbulence or an accident, and not using them can be fatal in an emergency situation. For a long time, the use of toxic substances in beauty products was a common practice in various cultures worldwide. These substances were believed to enhance the appearance and health of the skin and hair, and were considered symbols of social status. In ancient Egypt, for instance, makeup was highly valued, and women used a substance called kohl, made from antimony, an extremely toxic chemical. Kohl was applied around the eyes to enhance beauty and prevent eye infections, but its frequent use resulted in health issues. In medieval Europe, the nobility used a substance called ceruse, made from white lead to lighten the skin. However, continuous use of ceruse caused poisoning, leading to neurological damage and even death. In the 19th century, the use of toxic substances in beauty products remained common, with mercury used to lighten the skin and lead in lipsticks and powders. Only in the early 20th century, after the discovery of these substances' harmful effects, did beauty standards and the use of safer substances change. Currently, many countries have strict regulations on the use of toxic substances in beauty products and cosmetics, and companies are required to follow these standards to ensure consumer safety. That's it, folks. Let me know in the comments what you found to be the strangest, and if you know of more oddities, your comment might appear in a future installment. Don't forget to hit that like button, and see you next time.